Welcome to Roadcase, the podcast that explores the live music experience. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Josh Rosenberg, and I'll be taking you on a journey through in-depth interviews with performers and key people in the industry to explore the magic of live music, how it can be totally transformative for both fans and performers, and we'll look at how they take it all out on the road. It's going to be a great ride, so here we go. Okay, we're back. It's Roadcase. Really happy to be here. This is your host, Josh Rosenberg. I want to thank everyone for joining me on this next and new episode of Roadcase. We got a whole bunch of great episodes coming up, and this one's a great one too. And want to encourage everyone to keep getting involved with Roadcase. Let me know what you think. Send me your comments. Just say hi. You can email me, info@roadcasepod.com, or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Leave us comments. Let me know what you think. And if you can and would like to support the podcast on Patreon, we have a Patreon site, patreon.com/roadcasepod. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite listening platform. So today I'm really happy to have with us Andrew Jensen. Andrew is the co-founder with his brother Alex of the streaming service NoonChorus that was essentially born out of necessity during this COVID period of show shutdowns. It's a service that facilitates streaming of music and video, and super interesting how Andrew, during this COVID time, super early, right after the shutdown, was able to just turn, pivot, and move from what he had been doing before was like setting up campsites for festivals, for people to sleep overnight. And now all of a sudden, he and his brother are involved in this new streaming platform for bands to get in front of their fans during COVID, which I think is really fucking cool. And they've had like really interesting artists. They started out with like their biggest show was Japanese Breakfast. They had Kevin Morby on there, Waxahachie, Bully, just to name a few. They also work with venues and promoters to bring fans of particular bands to NoonChorus to see their favorite bands if they didn't know about it before. We talk a little bit about how this is going to possibly affect the viewing of live music in the future, whether that future is still characterized by show shutdowns or whether that future is going to be a combination possibly of both streamed and live music where fans are in a venue, quite possibly in a reduced capacity setting, and there are also fans at home watching on a stream, for example. So we'll talk about all those different issues. We'll talk a little bit about what the next steps are for Andrew and NoonChorus, and it's just a really interesting interview. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I know you really enjoy this interview with Andrew Jensen of NoonChorus, so here we go. Okay, I'm really glad to have Andrew Jensen here from NoonChorus. Hi, Andrew. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate it. You're doing some amazing stuff here. So I'd really be interested in hearing a little bit about your background and how you got here and what kind of brought you around to NoonChorus ultimately. Like were the steps in your development and interest in music that got you to this point?
Yeah. I guess I can just dive right into it. I
Please do.
the company is relatively new. But I guess in the age of COVID, where every day feels like a year or a month or whatever,
Yeah.
it feels much like we've been doing it for a much longer time. But my brother Alex and I started it together in late March. Started developing the idea and then launched with our first shows in April. And what we wanted to do was create. I think what happened was when it was like March 15th or 16th or something
Yeah, yeah. We all remember
when
the date.
yeah, when New York's, because I'm in New York City, when everything started to shut down, De Blasio shut the schools down, and at that moment it just felt like a collective, like everyone was inside, and we started to see all these live streaming events happening on social media platforms, and I was watching one with James Blake. He was doing on Instagram Live in the middle of the day,
Hmm.
and there was 20 or 30,000 viewers watching, something wild like
Wow.
that, and in
Wow.
the middle of the day, and he stopped mid song because he got nervous. He's like, I think this is the biggest gig I've ever played. But it's sort of set in at that moment that there was, like, this was something that people were going to respond to, that we're all going to kind of be in this situation. I mean, I didn't think it would be this long, but we were going to be in this situation together for a bit of time, and that while the social media platforms were really great at, I guess, connecting as many people as possible, there was going to be so many musicians out there that weren't going to be able to connect with their fans, and then
Hmm.
also not be able to earn any money, because I mean, the situation for music these days is, I would say most musicians are earning their money from touring. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
the
Yep.
digital streaming services and the way the recording industry works is just not in favor of musicians. So it
Hmm.
really sort of set in, and it felt like there was not a place for, I guess, like independent touring musicians. I don't want to put I don't want to call it indie, but I feel like there's some genres that had live streaming and paid live streaming, ticketed events online,
Hmm.
ticketed virtual events. They had that down. We were talking before this started about the jam band scene. Like,
Right.
they've had that nailed. The dance music scene or EDM, they have gone to Twitch, or figured out ways to maybe give it away for free. It's been a part of their community as well. But
Right.
there was
Pre-COVID.
yeah, pre-COVID,
Yeah, yeah,
before
yeah.
this began,
They had they had already been doing this, right?
but there
But
was definitely genres that just had not. Uh,
yeah, the
I don't.
smaller artists, indie, some just hadn't really latched on to that or hadn't
And
really had to really. It wasn't really part of their model at the time.
right.
So to
So
kind of make that change was you found that was challenging for them?
yeah, well, I don't know what I think personally. It was more like, I think with everything, there's there just like in music, there's different genres, and people compartmentalize those things. I
Mhm.
just didn't think there was like a consensus of where these artists could go. They didn't have a home on the internet, or a place where they would where those types of musicians would play. The jam band community had nugs and things like that, and like I
Yeah,
said, EDM had Twitch or other Boiler Room had been doing things for years, but
right.
that sort of indie touring scene did not have a place.
Mhm,
So it
mhm.
just felt like like a light bulb went off at that
Is that
moment.
is that what you were doing before Noon Chorus? Like, what was up before that? Like,
Not at all. I ran a company called Contentment Camping, which was,
contentment camping?
yeah.
Okay.
Um, my mother and I started it together in, oh, right after I left college, right after I left DePaul. Um, it was we did on-site accommodation for music festivals. So
Oh, interesting, interesting.
if you went to Bonnaroo, or we pioneered the Coachella program, Lock-In, which we were talking about before, Electric
Mhm.
Forest. We did about 40 events a year. So if you went to any major festival and you did glamping or any sort of on-site VIP accommodation,
Right.
that was our company,
Wow.
Contentment Camping, that supplied that,
How
and
was that business?
exhausting.
Yeah.
um,
How so?
well, it was. I mean, we owned 500 tents. They would all be outfitted like little hotel rooms with real mattresses and pieces of furniture and linens and all that. All that was loaded up
Sound
onto.
sounds like my kinda camping for sure. Yeah, I don't
I
really
mean,
do
it
the hardcore camping myself. I do the glamping, so we need to talk.
after like almost 10 years of the glamping and moving all that stuff, I'm like, all I want to do is the minimal backpacker camping now because
Sleep in a permanent home with walls.
yeah, exactly.
So you were doing this. How long had you been doing that for, and how was it working with your mom?
Um, so we did that for, I guess, when was that? 2011 or 12 through 2019. So quite a while.
Was that a family business? Was your mom into that before you were, before you
She had, yeah, she had started it in we're from Buffalo, New York,
Mhm.
originally. So she had, she's always kind of been an entrepreneurial spirit. She ran some non for profits in the uh, Buffalo public school system that benefited the Buffalo public schools. And
Mm.
she stepped down from that, kind of handed the business she started over to people that she was working with. And after a um, trip. I don't know where. I think we went out to somewhere in California. I think it was in Yosemite or something like that.
Mhm.
We stayed in some glamping style tents, and she was like, this was so nice for someone my age to bring in the kids. Why isn't this at all the state parks?" So initially, she wanted to do this glamping thing in the state parks, and
Mhm.
she had brought it to the New York State parks surrounding the Buffalo area. So Niagara Falls is right there. So she had been doing some things there. But that was only a few years, and just the red tape dealing with the state parks was kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
and this was kind of at the same time that the music festival, I don't know, boom was happening. They just seemed to
Right.
be popping up in every
So she
area.
was like, "Working with state parks sucks. Let's work with, music festivals."
That was kind of the idea. I had gone to one. I think it was Coach. Yeah, I went to Coachella, and they you had to pay to bring your own camping gear, and then
Mhm.
they had these like incredibly expensive Indian wedding tents and teepees, but they didn't have
Yeah.
anything in between. So it was kind of like she already had some of this inventory, and it was like, oh, that's a perfect space for that. And
Yeah,
then
yeah. I mean, I was kidding, obviously, but
right, no, no, I
it's
know,
a
but
supernatural transition because there's so much glamping that goes on. I mean, camping, and there was obviously a need for, like, higher end glamping and someone that can provide that.
yeah, so it was just kind of a perfect. I don't know. It just she called up Bonnaroo and Coachella, I guess 2011, and
Mhm.
um, they were like, yeah, let's do it. So she went from owning like 20 tents to 200 overnight.
Wow.
Um, and the first year was just chaos. All the tents that we bought, the uh, the waterproofing had like glued the canvas together in the heat, and just because I don't know if you've ever been down to Bonnaroo, but it's like at 6 in the morning, it's like 100% humidity and a
Yeah,
thousand degrees, and
yeah.
it's brutal. So it
So
was just that
it got the waterproofing that was on the canvas got stuck everything together like a
it,
glue. That's
like a glue. So we had, and it was just like me and my college
really well
friends.
manufactured canvas, man.
It
Fuckers.
wasn't. It
No,
wasn't.
I'm kidding. Fuck.
Yeah, it wasn't at all.
So
Yeah. So that I mean,
so
and
how'd
that
that
just
resolve, and, like, how'd you that was an inauspicious, start to the music festival
we got
business.
it we got it done, but that kind of was like that was for the next almost decade. That was basically every event. It was just like, you know it's not uh if a problem is going to happen, it's when, and then you just learn how to like deal with them. I mean, you're working with it's we mainly worked with hired college kids or kids that had off during the summer. They would come on basically on the road with us, on tour with us for 4 or 5 months.
Mhm.
They get free access to all these music festivals, but it's just you're managing a new crop of labor every summer. You got thousands of pieces of inventory, 6 box trucks, tractor trailers. It's yeah, it was an exhausting business, but definitely eye opening, and
Yeah, clearly with the challenges, you learned a ton just, about how to do that. Well,
yeah.
that sounds pretty cool. I mean, you got to see a lot of good music too, right? I mean, you were at these festivals. Maybe you weren't, like, super hanging around, but,
Yeah,
Inevitably, you're going to have a lot of contact with musicians and the festival vibe. And, you were in you were really, there, like, kind of in a microcosm. I mean, you're doing this. So the question was like, how did you pivot over to this Noon Chorus and kind of,
I know.
because
I'm sorry.
there had no, 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 no. This is really cool. I'm glad this is super interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
that you had that seed in your head, like because you were always bringing people to music, right? And now
right.
that ending, um, was that, I mean, I'm looking at the scenario from my standpoint. uh, how did this experience, help you to come up with something like a Noon Chorus live streaming platform or facilitation platform?
I think this is a really good question. I think like sort of big picture, I think of it like what I learned from working with my mother, who's kind of like a fearless sort of entrepreneur, is
Right,
just that if you have an idea and you think it's doable and you can and you have the ability to do something, go for it and try to start something. I think like
right.
from starting a business, um, that big picture idea, I learned that from the contentment camping years and just
Yeah,
her example.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
She's kind of an incredible mentor, both a parent but also a business mentor.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so that was sort of instilled in me, because of her.
Is she
Um,
involved in Noon Chorus, just incidentally?
no, no, I mean,
Uh-huh.
well, I mean, she's like always. I mean, she's retired now because we sold contentment camping, but
Right.
uh, she's one of those restless sort of, you know, always has to be doing something types. So
Yeah, yeah.
she's very much like our closest advisor.
That's
Um,
awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
And I don't know, you work with your brother with Noon Chorus. How did we mention that already? I just wanted to make that clear. So it's interesting kind of family
yeah,
connection stuff, you know?
yeah. I think that was probably another big part of it is was that. I mean, I'm sure he's got a lot of that spirit from her as well. Alex lives in Chicago, but at the and let me just be clear, like maybe the I kind of put the idea in his head, but none of this would be possible if it was not if it wasn't for Alex. Like he is the
You hear that,
he
Alex?
yeah, I know, right? He I'll send him a clip of this after. But he
Well, I'm hoping he'd listen to this at some point.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm sure he will. He is kind of the tech brains behind it all. He put the whole platform
Right.
together. He built the website. He has done all that. So it's very sort of and how quickly he was able to do it. Very impressive. His background is in video production and web development. So he had some experience in live streaming before this, but
Oh, okay.
um, he's just very, I don't know. He's got this ability to when he wants to do something, he like learns everything about that subject and figures out how to make it work, which I think is rare these days.
Yeah, well, that's
I
a key element in doing this because it's so fascinating that, you were so let's go back. You were watching the James Blake thing. The whole
right.
biggest, like, the fascination is that all of us, you were able to just turn this on a dime and then go, "Hey, there's a better way of doing this. Let's get artists in front of their fans because this thing's going to shit and live shows are already shut down. You're watching this stream." Was that when the kind of idea came to you?
Yeah, I think the idea came watching that show and like very early on in March and saying like, oh, this could be something. Um, and I think just given how psyched the chat was and the fan base was when watching that, I was like, people
Yeah.
are going to be starved for this. um, it's a tough time and like music has this unbelievable that's what I learned from the festivals as well. It's got this
Yeah.
unbelievable ability to sort of bring people
Bring
together.
people together, man. That's what I miss, man. That's
Yeah,
the biggest thing that I miss, you know?
but and I know like I say this to all our clients, the virtual experience is never going to replace that in-person
No.
experience, but it's it's pretty incredible when you get a couple thousand people on there and they're chatting away and they love something and it's just like
It's amazing. It's as close as you're gonna get.
yeah, it really is. And it's a it's a welcome. And that's what music is. It's like a welcome distraction. Whatever your, I think, whatever entertainment you're into, whether it's sports or music or something like that, it's it transcends us from the day-to-day life and reminds us like what is so great about life. And I think music has that unbelievable ability to do that, to connect people of all different races and genders and creeds and religions and all these things, and
Absolutely.
just bring people together and kind of be that distraction, that
Totally,
that
totally.
may be needed right now.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. Just that's why I'm doing this because of music,
Yeah,
man. It's
yeah,
the greatest thing, yeah, and I remember those first streams in March and in April when I was like, "Fuck, we're not gonna get back to this," but, I had that kinda buzz after you see those things and, not only the music, that almost goes without saying, the music is always there, it's also the community, it's, uh, musicians, getting their message out to their fans and fans interacting with one another. I mean, I'm not a show talker. I'm not gonna talk during a show, but, hey, I like to participate in the chat during it and talking to other fans and, "Hey,
yeah.
wow, Derek's really killing it," or,
Right, right.
whatever it is. It's super fun, and that creates a buzz all on its own.
I wonder if all those people in the chat are show talkers, though.
I don't know. That's a good poll. Let's do a Noon Chorus poll.
We
Like,
can
we're
do
trying to
that.
figure out what's the demographic. Do you usually talk during shows? I don't know. I do like talk. I mean, I kinda like, okay, I'm a show talker now, and I'm really conscious. If I'm in the chat, I'm really conscious that I could be completely and utterly focused on the music, but this is kinda fun, you know? I mean, I
Yeah, and
it's
it's
not
it's like
it's not show talking when I'm in the chat.
I hear you, and it's also
Eh,
like like God, like social life has gone out the window, right? So like that is like your moment to connect with your fellow people in a way, right?
exactly, exactly, precisely. It's that kinda feeling of community. I mean, we talk a lot here, about bands needing to connect with fans, and really the heart of my podcast is about live music experience and how musicians connect with their fans and their fan base and what that feels like and how integral it is to a musician's career, not only to their livelihood but to their creative process. And that notwithstanding, yes, touring is part of the business and is how they make money, but it's also how they get in front of fans, what that energy is like, and that propels the touring industry to continue to move forward. And obviously, in absence of this, we've got streams. And so, how did you do such a quick turnaround to make this all happen? And yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, the technology I think we talked about in the beginning has been there for a while, so I don't think it's not a novel idea to monetize live streaming.
Hmm.
Um, so and again, credit to Alex to like figure it out and launch it quickly. To figure out something that was, I think that's kind of the beauty of Noon Chorus is it doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles. It's like a very sort of simple, clean looking thing.
Yeah.
So for him to just be able to launch that or build that quickly was key. But again, it's not something that we necessarily had to build from scratch because a lot of the components had existed. But it was more about building something that I think goes back to what I was saying as well in the beginning is building like a home for certain musicians, making it feel like a place that not only the musicians would want to come to, but also the fans of those musicians would want to come to. So it
Hmm.
was very important for us to build something that didn't. I think a lot of these platforms are designed to look. They're advertised to maybe the managers or the agents or whoever the artist team is as a tool for their artists. We wanted to create almost like a digital venue where um, it was sort of very B2C in the sense that it was you know consumer facing and a place
Right.
that this fan base would want to come back and they would say, "Oh my gosh, they have this artist too. Yeah, I would buy tickets for not just the one I was directed here to, but you
Yeah.
know."
Yeah.
And
So what
go ahead. Sorry.
What are the key elements of that community? Like, if you said you wanna create a place for artists that feel at home, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, I think that's what you said. Um, what is
Well,
it about your service that does that?
I think we talked about. Twitch, for example,
Hmm.
or the social media platforms as well. They have many other users on there that are not music driven, or if there is music on there, it's all sorts of different genres, and it can be easy, especially for these smaller artists who have dedicated fan bases, but they're still not huge touring musicians or huge national acts, to get lost in something like that.
Yeah.
So creating a space that kind of amplified them and uh, didn't allow them to get lost in the noise of other things going on the internet.
Right. So is it genre friendly, would you say? Or genre
Yeah.
focused? Or has it become
We
that way? Did you start out that way?
No, no. It was really, and it is. It's open to any musician. I think with the intent of focusing on musicians that particularly rely on touring for their income, and trying to find a way to help them replace that
Mhm.
that was the key motive behind it.
Yeah, I mean, but I looked at the artist lineup, and it's primarily indie artists. It seems to like that just kind of happens naturally. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
what you're saying is you're describing a reason why artists would come, and then that sort of implies that certain types of artists do show up, and if you look over the list, they seem to have some commonalities in that regard. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just wondering what your
no.
thoughts are on that.
I think we're not intentionally curating it by any means.
Mhm.
But it sort of self perpetuates itself in a way.
Mhm.
Our first art major artist was Sub Pop's Bully, um,
Yeah, yeah. Great new album.
and yeah, great new album. She's done a couple shows with us.
Mhm.
She's managed by a company called Ten Atoms,
Uh-huh.
and they kind of took a chance on us, and we owe them a lot. But they represent artists like Whitney and Japanese Breakfast and the Mountain Goats,
Right, so it sorta it starts to snowball because all of those guys you had on are gonna have on.
and they've referred us to Ryan and his crew at Ten Atoms has referred us to
Right.
many of their contacts in the industry, and we have them to thank for a lot of the success because they were sort of the first ones to take a chance, but that has sort of allowed us to, or that has sort of carved out our niche because of the
Yeah.
first few artists that we had. I think
Mhm.
as well we knew that it needed to feel as if it were curated in a way, and it would follow a path that it needed to, depending on who the first few artists were. But um, and that's what it's done.
How do you control the sound quality? And how does that work with the band? Like, how do they, like, what does it technically look like? Do you send cameras to them? Do you send a crew to them? Do they provide their own crew? Are they just shooting with, a phone? What's up with the whole technical side?
It kind of runs the gamut. So in the beginning, we we were all in lockdown more or less, and all these musicians were at home, so they were using what they had at their disposal there,
Mhm.
whether it was their computers or their phones.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that made for a very interesting time because it was cool to see an artist in a different space, but you've seen the streams. Some of them were good and some of them were not, because of just the fact that you're using a MacBook or your laptop or whatever it is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to stream. Um, they could be lower sound quality or lower video quality. Um, then we realized that there was equipment that we could rent, that was cameras and things like that specifically for live streaming. So we started renting to those artists that were interested, to improve the at home live stream experience. We still do that, and
Renting
now
ca renting cameras.
yeah.
And
So
who operates them?
they
The artists come to a particular studio to do that?
no, I mean they're very small. Uh, it it's more or less like what you have in your phone.
Yeah, yeah.
A high quality small little camera,
Mhm.
a really good microphone, and then the option to hardwire that with Ethernet as well as connect some more advanced audio capture devices like
So
your
you and you'll send that to an artist?
yep.
Uh-huh.
If they want to rent it, that has actually declined because as we've moved further into this, touring has not come back, and live streaming
Right.
has continued to become less of this like interesting new idea and more of a mainstay
Yeah.
recently. And artists
Staple.
are putting a lot more into the production value of the streams. So they're doing them from unique locations with professional film crews and doing them from venues who already have had live streaming established.
Right. Right.
So the production value has gone up
Yeah.
tremendously, and the quality has gotten so much better. Really, what we do is just kind of provide the the video player and the ticketing service for the artist to direct that stream to, no matter the way that they produce it, whether it's at home or in
Right.
a
So they
more.
generally pre-record these performances and then they send it to you and then you stream it on your site.
Some, yes, some are recorded live with incredibly high production value
Right.
from venues and locations. So it's now it's kind of an equal balance of what's being done. And really, again, I think all of this has to be framed as like what's available given the situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can the artist safely go to a venue and film it live with a crew, or is it safer to do it with a smaller crew, pre-record it? So it really depends on
Yeah, I saw a
what's
quiet,
available.
small, intimate thing with, Kevin Morby when he played, the Oh My God album. I guess
Yeah,
he was in his living room, or it
yeah.
seemed like it was super intimate, but the sound was really good. Why are you smiling?
No, because it's funny because like his girlfriend Katie Crutchfield is
Yep.
Waxahachie,
Yeah,
and she
yeah.
performed from that same living room like very early on
Oh,
NoonChorus.
cool,
So
cool,
that living
cool.
room is kind of like a
That's their
like a
performance space.
well, it's like a special place space for NoonChorus too because we've
Oh,
had
that's
two
really
really
cool.
cool series. But he
And then
used
he
one of those cameras actually that we rented him.
Oh,
So
he did, yeah, I was wondering how he was shooting that. That was it really came out well, and I think
oh,
the
thanks.
sound
Yeah,
quality was really excellent.
yeah, they have a nice built-in, and you can connect different audio interface. So yeah, that
Right.
was a cool series. He did those from his living room, and then the last one he did
The record
uh,
release, right, of
yeah,
Sundowner?
yeah,
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 that was really, really cool. Really, I
yeah.
enjoyed that. And you kinda get a twofer with him and Katie.
I know that's pretty cool.
Obviously, you saw he brought her out for, like, the la at the end of Oh My God, that was really
Yeah,
cool. Like, "Where's
yeah.
Katie?" And then he, like, leaves the room for a little bit and then comes back. It was super cool. I mean,
I
you
know,
know,
I know.
all this stuff is just kinda like live, off the cuff kinda things that happen, and it's to add that kinda unique piece that performers can provide, fans are really interested in seeing, something that they don't ordinarily see, which is
Yeah.
great, which is great.
They're a super unique, like I love using the both of them as like a proof of concept because I don't know
Mhm,
if you saw early on, but before Katie did hers in June, she did
mhm.
5 shows with us, one for each album, just like Kevin did.
And then
Um,
did she culminate it with the record
y-
release with the
y-
St. Cloud?
yeah, she did, and
Oh, that's really cool. So
that
then
was
Kevin was like,
incredible.
"I'm doing that too."
Right, and Kevin actually came out and did like an encore with her for the St. Cloud one, but
Oh, right on.
they
God, what
were
a great
doing.
album that is.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, isn't
Goddamn,
it?
unbelievable.
And
Oh,
like that whole band, the guys from Bonnie Doon, and like that whole yeah. Hats off to everyone that worked on that record.
no,
It's
yeah,
amazing.
totally,
Katie
totally,
deserves so much
totally.
credit for it. It's amazing. What was I saying? Oh, they were doing the Instagram shows, like a weekly rodeo thing, the two of them,
Mhm.
and it was incredible. It was like the way they were connecting with people. I think similar to the thing that I saw with James Blake. It was like they were the one of the early adapters
Right.
to do that, and tons of people were tuning in. But what was incredible is they moved to the paid option with us, and they still were able to bring so many people over.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's like an apprehension from a lot of, or
What's the
man,
apprehension that their fans won't pay for it?
yeah, it's their management teams or whoever's behind, supporting them, saying, well, this stuff has been given away for free for so long. Will the fans respond? And at
Well,
the end of the day, that
there's only one way of finding that out.
right,
And did the fans respond?
yeah, tremendously for both of them. uh, Katie's thing. I mean, I think with Katie, the way that she did it, her album had come out, so there was so much momentum behind that album.
Hmm.
She, I think, exceeded everyone's expectations of what it would sell in terms of tickets and how many
Yeah,
people
that's
tuned in.
awesome. I mean, I do think their fans want to support their artists, and $15 or $20 or whatever that level of artist is charging is perfectly reasonable. And it's like they're not at the venue where they charge that much for a fucking beer, man.
I know. And I think that's like such a good point. Like that is such a huge thing of like I think fans also, we started this with the idea of like wanting to help artists replace some of that lost income, and the
Hmm.
fans are very much like right there with us in
Oh,
that.
hell yeah. Hell yeah. Even with the crews. I mean, buy this t-shirt for the crew. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
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 I love if
exactly.
it weren't for the crew, you guys wouldn't be on stage. Like, let's do this.
Right,
What can I do to help, you know?
right. That's what
Can
Japanese.
you Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead. Japanese breakfast?
she did that with hers. Her stream. I mean, that was our biggest one. It was so early on in May when she did hers. It was our biggest one to date in like May 18th or something, and
Mhm.
all that money went to her band and crew. So it's been a great way
Oh,
to raise
really? That
money for not just the artists but causes of their choice too.
Can you give a sense of how many people tuned in to Japanese breakfast?
Um, I could say a lot.
Is the
I don't.
metric that they mentioned in Rolling Stone magazine that's floating around that it's 0.5% to 2% of Instagram followers generally watch these shows?
Yeah, we say 1 to 2% of whatever their most followed social media account is,
Most
and
followed, yeah. I mean, I said Instagram because that usually is the one, right?
totally,
No,
yeah.
yeah,
For
yeah, yeah.
her, for most of the artists that we have, yeah.
Right.
But they Japanese Breakfast and Whitney and Waxahachie, they all exceeded those
They
numbers.
exceeded the 1 to 2%?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what's the highest percentage of that you've seen?
We've gotten close to 10% of
Really?
that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
which
Uh-huh.
is so. I mean,
It's
I
a
think
good
those are.
it's a good indicator for those that wanna know. I'm always curious, like, who's tuning in?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a
Yeah?
good baseline, I think. Yeah, it's a good, like, baseline to set.
Yeah, yeah. So, talking about numbers and talking about viewers, what's the business been like?
Um, it's been October's been our best month to
Well,
date. It's we've sold a lot of tickets, over the
yeah.
past few months.
Let me mention too, when I'm talking about the business, and we haven't spoken about this, but you make it free for artists,
Right.
and then artists can charge what they want,
Correct.
and they pay you. Fans pay through NoonChorus. You
Correct.
get that back to the artist, and then you charge a fee. Why don't you talk a little bit about that structure if I got it right? I just kinda wanted to say that I knew what the structure was. That's your job.
No, you nailed it. I guess it's it's artist driven, right? So,
Yeah,
we give advice as to what we've seen work and not work, but,
yeah. Can
the
I
artist
charge
gets.
$50 a person? Maybe that's pushing it.
Yeah,
You never know.
yeah, yeah. Look at the
So you
Malgats. I mean, they're two-show packages about that. So, um, no, but they get to choose. The artist gets to choose, or their teams get to choose what they want to charge. I would say the average ticket price is, well, the average ticket price is around $13 and change before our service fee, and that seems to be going up closer to 15 as the production value has gone up. So those are kind of correlated. Um, we charge a service fee on top that is passed on to the viewer, very similar to your standard uh, ticket purchase and physical ticket purchase.
How
But
much
we're
is
not.
that? What's the percentage generally been?
It's about 20%, and that covers all the credit card processing, the sales tax. There's a cost per viewer to enter the stream, the PRO licensing, so that all the music is able to be performed legally and everyone's
Yep.
being compensated the correct way, and then a percentage that goes to us. So if the artist chooses a $10 ticket to sell to their fans, that's what's advertised to the fan. They collect 100% of that. So every ticket they sell, they get $10. There's no split or reduction for processing fees or anything like that. It's all covered through our fee.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have fans, like, gone, "Oh, fuck, service fees? You guys are like fucking Ticketmaster."
No, not at all. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
I
I mean,
think with any,
I didn't do that. I'm just making that up.
I think it's like a question everyone asks, but like we could bake it in, but that would be a high. I think what's really our model is that it's artist friendly, and we want to be transparent as like what the fan is giving to the artist, and the
Mhm.
small percentage that we take, um, it just allows us to keep running this. So that's really the point of it.
Yeah, I like the transparency. I like that you're saying that the money's going to the artists. Um, and, you guys need to make money, and you're bringing this to the fans. Is there, is there a chat mechanism on Noon Chorus?
Yeah, there's a chat on the video player, so you can chat throughout the show. The
Right.
artist can decide if that's something they want to have or not. But
Mhm.
going back
And
to like the Morby and the Waxahachie ones, they're such storytellers. They're interacting with the chat the whole time. It's pretty cool to see.
yeah,
That's
no,
something
it's super cool.
that you never
I w
get to see.
I watched Trey Anastasio last night from The
Cool,
Beacon,
nice.
and he does this really cool thing where, I've only seen Phoebe Bridgers do this, who you need to get on Noon Chorus.
Would love to.
Um,
She's hard to
she's
pin down right now. She's
Yeah,
everywhere.
I'm sure, spectacular, and if you're a fan, watch, what she did, at the Troubadour. Watch that Troubadour
I
set, it's really
did. Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
that
yeah.
was really
Yeah, really amazing.
yeah.
Um, so Trey, they turn just parenthetically, they turn it around so that the venue is in back, so he's, like, facing the back wall of the venue. So
Okay.
when they show him, you can see the venue behind him, which is a great backdrop instead of
Like
just
all the
the typical
seats.
show background. Yeah, right. So the
Incredible, yeah.
drum riser, like, you think like, "Oh, don't," if he falls backwards, he's, like, falling into the seats, basically. I mean, I'm sure there's some space back there, but it freaked me out. But the reason why I mentioned Phoebe is not only because she'd be great on Noon Chorus, but, the only other artist I've seen do that, and, like, I haven't seen every stream, but Phoebe, set up her band. They did a Red Rock show, and I don't know if they do every live show at Red Rocks, but it was, like, up in the stands, like, near where the soundboard is in Red
Yeah,
Rocks. So they were shooting it up into Red Rocks instead of, like, just showing the stage from the typical stands perspective, which is cool, but
right.
you don't see a show where someone's, like, on where the soundboard is looking upwards at those 2 huge monoliths on either
And
side.
that's what you
It
want.
was
That's what you
super
wanna s
fucking cool. Like, let's do, like, super cool, original, different shit. Let's see if you're gonna do it in venues, like, let's do venues in a different way. Like, then you don't feel
Hell
so
yeah.
sad. That I like the direct, the ability for artists to do something different to fans. Like, let's make this about how is this gonna be different? Like, we know this is the era of COVID.
Mhm.
You're in an empty venue. Okay, it's like the no clapping right afterwards, but let's recognize that there's something that could be done that's even more and, like, super fucking cool on top of just getting to your fans.
I agree, like, take full advantage. I mean, this sucks, right? We can't be
Yeah.
there. We
Yeah,
can't be
we
there.
haven't said that enough here, but that's kind of a fucking given at this point. This is
Yeah,
bullshit.
that
But
this
it is what it
sucks,
is. It
right?
is
Like,
what it is.
we acknowledge that, and I think, but, like, let's take advantage of the fact that, oh, maybe we can use these spaces creatively. I mean, Devendra Banhart, Angel Olsen, they both did some incredible streams. Devendra
Yeah.
did one at the Bob Baker Marionette Theater in LA, and he had
Mhm.
like the puppets performing with him, and
Oh, that's
uh,
fucking cool.
yeah, it was so cool and so weird.
I didn't see it. Why don't you explain a little bit? It's like little, like, marionettes or something like that, or
Yeah, little marionettes were like dancing on the stage with him, and
that's fucking cool. I
that
saw Beck do that once at a huge, like, like a college basketball stadium
oh
tour that he
wow,
did it. He was at UIC, didn't you? Maybe you were at that show. Was it when you were in Chicago?
I saw a
You left
lot of
Chicago.
shows. I saw a lot
Yeah.
of shows down there, but I don't know if I didn't see Beck down there.
he did like a little puppet show on the side, which was imitating what he did, and that was on like the video screen.
What
What
album
was
was that
that
for?
was it was for the information.
Okay.
It was super fucking
That
cool.
sounds awesome.
It
Yeah.
was really wild. So, instead of, like, there was I think there was a video screen, instead of the video screen showing him, it would just show this little marionette puppet show that was mimicking the motions of the artists on that were on the stage.
Yeah.
It was fucking
That's
really cool. So, yeah, so Devendra did this kinda thing in LA, and they're doing, like, different unique things, and it's super cool.
yeah. I think like, well, I think it brings up like a broader point is like the one of the upsides to this is that you can see artists in maybe venues that they're too big to perform at now. We just had Pup last night do something from Sneaky D's in Toronto, which is like I mean, I personally don't know the venue that well, but the way that they were describing it, it's like something like the Bottle in
Mhm.
Chicago, or
Mhm.
um, these venues that are like legendary, but the band's just too big to perform there now. They're going to play at bigger places.
Right.
So the band can go back to this place that meant so much to them and is so important to them,
Yeah,
or like the
totally.
Hideout in Chicago. We had um, Jeff Tweedy do like his book release with Nick Offerman from there. Like
Right, yeah.
the Wilco or Jeff Tweedy can't go play it in the Hideout anymore in Chicago. It's
Yeah.
but that place is so important to music and the culture of Chicago and Wilco, um, that is a big. That's really
Totally.
cool to me. That
Do you see that as a trend, like artists trying to come back to that or
I mean, yeah, definitely, I think so, and unique spaces, but especially with the venues, is like they understand how important that ecosystem is to be
Mhm.
there when we go back to some sort of normal. So for them, especially these bigger artists that have maybe moved past those size rooms, to come back and say, no, these places are what make this all possible. Like we would not be here if it was not for these places, and they need to come back. They need to
Right.
stay alive.
That's the statement they're making. Does it in fact help the artist? Like, does it help the venue? I mean, it maintains the level of visibility for the venue, but unless the venue's getting donations or Tweety's, like, donating the entire, amount of his, of ticket revenues to them, it's,
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about these is like we offer a co-promotion program, so venues can co-promote shows, and specifically for these ones that we're talking about, the venues like the Hideout, for example, was the hosting venue, so they essentially got to sell tickets. In fact, the Hideout and ourselves, they host all their virtual programming on NoonChorus. So um, but for that particular event, they got to sell tickets for an event and earn revenue. So
right,
them doing that in partnership with the Hideout rather than just doing it on their own
right.
is, I think, incredibly helpful for
Yeah, for
them.
sure. From that standpoint, yeah. So if they're able to sell tickets for Jeff, they can make a deal with Jeff. Maybe, in that instance, perhaps he's like donating it all to the high. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
But
the I
then,
don't know
but
the
then you're providing the front end and Noon Chorus. Do you have a lot of these partnerships that are out there, affiliates, if you will, and what is that looking like in terms of working with venues, et cetera, and getting some of those like brick and mortar uh,
yeah.
elements involved in streaming.
So I think there's kind of two things at play here. So the one is like the Hideout example.
Mhm.
Uh, Another partner of ours is Le Poisson Rouge here in New York, LPR TV. They just launched something as well. Both the Hideout and LPR are powering their platforms via Noon Chorus's ticketing and video players. So
Cool.
both of those venues are hosting live shows from their venues with no one there, and
Mhm.
being able to sell tickets to the public again. LPR, what I think is kind of cool about this is like in LPR's case and Hideout's case, two very big music cities in New York and Chicago, and no one can really travel right now. So you're getting all these New York based artists coming to this venue that is very important to the city and performing there, and they're able to live stream them and sell tickets.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do more
Is
of that.
I know we want to do more and more of that, and there's all sorts of hurdles to get around, of course. But for both of them, it's been a really, I mean, from our standpoint, it's been incredible to be able to work with both of them. We as all of us that work at NoonChorus, were like,
Mhm.
those two venues are so important to us as in our sort of musical tastes and
Yeah,
how it
yeah.
came up.
What
Um,
what are what are some of the biggest, the hurdles you mentioned in working with the venues?
well, I mean, New York and Chicago are two of the biggest cities in the country. They're cultural hubs. A lot of artists live there, so it's very easy for them to tap into the talent that's there. Um, but for like a venue in Boise, Idaho, um, there may not be sort of uh, these artists that there's artists there and there's wonderful artists there and incredibly talented folks. But what I'm trying to say is they're not these sort of nationally recognized where they can sell enough tickets to make it lucrative enough to maybe bring a staff back and things like that. So
Mhm.
I think there's hurdles in that sense where perhaps right now I don't want to limit it, but I think perhaps it is limited to major markets where there is sort of higher density of art of nationally recognized artists living in those cities. So I think,
Yeah, it's almost like a perpetuation of what the actual real problem is, right? I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
smaller venues in smaller towns that don't have the artists that can just hop across town and go put on a show at a venue to support that venue.
right,
Um, unfortunately, yeah, I see. So the challenges that you're facing are really endemic to the pandemic,
correct.
really.
And that's in that example, but there is a way for venues in those scenarios to still participate. So we have essentially an affiliate marketing program where we we have worked with over 200 promoters and venues worldwide. They can participate in any of our shows. They get a split of each ticket that they sell. So we create them a unique link and we're able to track their ticket sales and they can go and promote that via their channels to their fan base or their customer base. So they could sell, say, the Japanese breakfast show that's on NoonChorus, or they could sell the Mountain Goat show that's on NoonChorus, or whoever is performing. And in exchange for every ticket that they sell, they get ticket revenue for that. Um,
Hmm,
what that and it's it kind of benefits everyone involved. The artist is going to inevitably sell more tickets because they're involved in these promoters. So Noon Chorus then sells more tickets, and then the venue gets to drive ticket revenue. But also, I mean, I think it's like a dead zone right now, so they also get to continue to stay in the conversation, work with
right.
the and maintain the relationships that they've had for years, and continue promoting to their customer base and say like
Yeah,
it's also a platform for them to put their message out that hey, we need to stick around, we need to be here when we come back. It's a
yeah.
way to to continue that message as well.
So a venue will work with a particular artist and then set a ticket price together with that artist? I'm a little confused.
Yeah, so the way it works is the artist sets up a show with Noon Chorus, right?
Right.
So who do we have doing it right now? I mean, almost all the artists on the platform, but let's say Pop last night, they had like 30 promoters throughout the country that were co-promoting the show. Each one of those promoters, and Pop is selling the tickets on Noon Chorus for $13, let's say.
Mhm.
Um, Pup has said to the promoters, okay, we'll give you X amount of dollars for every ticket that you sell to this show. And in the way that we track those sales is each one of those promoters gets a unique link. So it'll be noonchorus.com
Gotcha, gotcha.
backslash
Right.
first av or something like that. And then, or backslash 930 club or the troubadour or whatever it is. And they can go and sell tickets to Pup to their fan base, and we can track how many, say, the Troubadour sold, and then we
Right.
pay them
And
out.
so the promoters will get access to the people they think might be interested in this through their relationships with a particular venue, so the venue gets their name in there as well,
Right.
and then the promoter takes a cut, in agreement with the artist. The promoter will
Yeah.
get a piece of that, the value of having their own fan base that they're hooked into that might be separate from the artist.
Yeah, and I'm also referring to promoters and venues kind of in the same as the same thing in a way,
Yeah,
because
I get that, yeah.
a lot of these venues have in-house, it's like First Ave is all their promoter, but also a venue in a way,
Right, so
right?
that brings up another question, like, so how many fans are coming through promoters that wouldn't necessarily have come to see this artist directly through their socials? Because that's kinda really how fans are, like, following artists, right, is through social media. Why would I see it out of a promoter and an email from a promoter or a venue that I went to, but not have seen that in Instagram? And so is that
Well,
happening?
it is. I mean, we're at first, it was around 25% of the artist ticket sales were coming from those co-promoters.
Huh,
Um,
okay.
and
There you go.
now it's about 10 to 15% depending on the show, which is still a really decent number. Um, and I think, again, I think it's like the just as these customers or fans want to support the artist, they also know they want to support the venues too. So they
Yeah.
may they may know that the venue is getting something for selling that ticket, so they'll buy it through them instead. Or,
Mhm.
they may not know Japanese breakfast, but they trust, um, this promoter or venue to always put on good music and promote shows that they like. So they're going to buy something that they may never have heard of before.
That's an excellent point. That's why, yeah, excellent point. You know, if you've seen a show at a particular venue and then they're kinda saying, "Oh, well, this artist is doing this, and, through us, you should come see them, and, oh, by the way, NoonChorus is hosting it on the internet, so come
Right.
do this and check
Right.
that out." Yeah, it makes a lot of
Exactly.
sense. Um, the most interesting thing is that this is sort of the setup for the future, right? I mean, you're not gonna fold up shop once we go back to shows, and the question, when do you think we're coming back to shows? Just because 'cause I'm interested in talking to people in the industry as to what each person particularly thinks. I mean, it's not kind of a
I
secret as
don't.
to what's going
I
on.
don't know. I mean, I don't know. That I think is the best answer that you get, because I mean, we could talk for hours about this, but like
Yeah,
I
let's.
th- I think that I think we're very hopeful that like once the year ends, like things are just going to be back to normal. Like 2021 is just going to bring like normalcy back, but I mean, that's just
That's
not.
what we thought in, like, April.
I know. So that's just not how things work. And
Right.
unfortunately, also what we're seeing is, I mean, it's part of the beauty of this country. It's part of the thing that's not beautiful about it, but each state, each county, each region has very different rules about and how things are being handled. And I mean, we've just seen that over the past few months. So
Yeah.
it's not going to be some flip of a switch that
No, not at all.
everything comes back at once. And therefore, how do you route a tour around that? You know, um, how do you route a tour if like Philadelphia has cases spiking and the venues aren't open, but New York is open? It's not going to be financially responsible for an artist to go on tour unless they can hit a certain amount of dates. And I mean, the margins are thin as they
Yeah, yeah.
are with that.
It's an
With that,
interesting point, right. With so many different regulations going on across the country, to be able to actually schedule a tour across the country,
and
there's
not
not
having
there you can't just do lowest common denominator, you've because the lowest common denominator is gonna be different in each state. You've gotta wait until there's a general baseline where everyone's going back to shows at the same time, and then there's a
exactly.
2 to 3 month lead time out of that.
I know.
So, when we first started this whole fucking thing, and everyone, the first person said, "We're not getting back to shows until 2021." Everyone's like, "Fuck." But now it seems it's like that's a
Maybe
bitter pill to
longer.
swallow. Could be longer. Um, that said, so Noon Chorus is in a great position because this could go on forever. It's not like I would like to
Yeah.
think, because I know you a little bit by now, that you're not like, "Oh, yeah, let's, oh, I hope this goes on for so
I'm
long.
not. I'm not. I
But
think for
because
me,
let's talk about, this is the future. This could be an integral part of the future of the fan experience, and how fans experience the work of their favorite artists online. But maybe you just don't even say online anymore. You just say, this is how we're experiencing music, if you're not going to a show, if
right.
you're not physically there.
And if you can't, right? Like what if your local venue is closed, or you're living in an area that you can't have shows, what are you going to do? So ideally, live streaming continues to help connect fans to their favorite artists, even when things come back, because I don't think it's going to be a very sort of staggered path, crooked path back to normalcy.
Hmm.
Um, and ideally, live streaming is going to help continue to facilitate those connections. I think on top of that, it's like it's also going to be. I would. We see it as something that will stick around even when things are normal. I think we talked about this in the beginning. There's been many bands that have proven that live streaming is successful during pre-COVID. Like
Yeah,
live
yeah,
streaming their shows,
right, yeah, yeah.
and but not everyone has to have the like film crew like Fish does that travels with them to make it happen. Venues are investing in it. Ticketing companies are anticipating this being a big thing. I mean, the infrastructure is being put in place for it to be available to artists that are not Fish.
Yeah, right.
That
Hmm.
so I think that's going to be super interesting, and I think it'll be great. I mean, if I live in Buffalo, New York, or a small town, and Angel Olsen skips over Buffalo. She goes from New York to Toronto instead of stopping through Buffalo. Like, at least I can still watch a show because she's live streaming it from one of those venues.
Yeah. I mean, it is sort of a net positive in a sense. I mean, you want to make lemon out of pandemic aid out of lemons, to roughly quote Trey from last night. It's like, it is what it is. It's good. Um, we got to do what we have to do, and good things are going to come out of it in a sense.
Yeah.
And you're kind of right at the forefront of being able to do that. And yeah, clearly a lot of live music has been streamed before. But in general, this live streaming phenomenon, and the business opportunities therein would stick around. And how do you see it kind of changing the face of music going forward? I mean, you mentioned a
Um,
couple things already.
I, I just think that I think that, again, I think like the whole point of us starting this was, hey, this works for other genres. Why can't this work for all genres in music? Why isn't everyone implementing this? And I think this unfortunate situation that we're in is proving that's doable, and that it's can be successful for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, so I really think that's going. I mean, that's what we expect, and that's what we hope, is that this is just a tool that people can use, when things come back to normal, on top of what we are already used to at live shows. Um, because I think it's been proven in other genres, and I think I think we have a whole host of ideas of how that's going to work. But I think it's going to be. We truly hope that it's going to be a great way for not just artists but venues to make up for lost revenue due to reduced capacities. So, I mean, probably the first thing we're going to see, like we're seeing in restaurants, like we're seeing in most public spaces, is some sort of reduced capacity. And I think you and I both know, like, a venue can't
Hmm.
have a show unless they're at full capacity. It's not, the margins aren't there to do it. So what
Right.
can they do to make up for that? Ideally, live streaming can be a great way to make up for some of that lost income.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, venues aren't gonna just wait until we can have a full sold out show or
Shit,
whatever,
no,
just fill the whole
no.
thing. No, they're gonna start to do this limited capacity. So what you're suggesting is that streaming can, venues partnering with NoonChorus, for example, in the best case scenario, would be able to stream the show using either your uh, your hardware or their hardware, they're already set up, and then just stream it through your service and create a revenue stream that can augment what they have in-house at that time. That's kinda
Totally.
happening a little bit with drive-in shows right now, I think.
Yeah, we've streamed some drive-in shows.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing one. We're streaming some in-person shows too, with St. Paul and the Broken Bones, for example, where they're doing a show from uh, their hometown, or yeah, Birmingham,
Yeah.
I think, right? And sorry, it's hard to keep up even
Yeah,
with my
it's okay.
own.
I'm not keeping score, but anyway.
um,
Maybe I should. Here, hold on, let me tally that one.
they're yeah, they have a reduced capacity show. They're performing their first album, um, and we're streaming it so that that in person show is going to sell out. So
Right.
we're
Where do you think fan demand will be when there's an opportunity to go back to a show? Um, do you think fan demand where do you think that fan demand is gonna be when they could see an artist at a show, but they're playing either, like, at the next city or they're doing something at home? Do you think there'll be less demand? Is that a question that's sorta come up?
I mean, definitely. I mean, look at movies. Like movies were coming back to major theaters.
Mhm.
Um, there was all this buzz around Tenet being like the thing that was going to save the movie industry again, and um, I don't think people are fully comfortable with it yet. I don't,
Mhm.
um, I don't, so that's going to happen. There's going to be some like what is the word, like PTSD or something from
I
this.
think people understandably will be cautious going back to
Yeah.
shows, but what I'm saying is that do you where do you think that fan demand and
Mm.
interest will be in seeing multiple shows if an artist is kind of performing to limited capacity venues? So you go to the show, where do you think fan demand is gonna be going down the road to see that artist again? And will live shows kind of be eating into Noon Chorus at some point? Or what are your thoughts on where that's gonna go in the future in terms of demand? I'm sure you've thought about that.
Yeah, we've thought a lot about it and how to like structure it. I think we for most of our shows, it's we talked about that 1 to 2% of the artist following that are kind of coming by the
Yeah,
tickets, and
yeah, yeah, yeah. 1 to 2% of their biggest social
I think that's always
following.
gonna. I think that's their super fans, those are the diehards. I think if they're offered something to see that artist that they love, I mean, I was this way. Maybe less so now, but when I was younger about certain artists, like I would consume anything that they were doing, right?
Yeah.
Like when I was in
What's the
high
band that
school,
comes into your mind right away?
anything that like Radiohead did when I was in high school, it was just like,
Right on.
ugh, like just like let me, like have more of that, right? So I think
Right.
there's like I think that's that's the beauty of fandom, I think, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so I mean, I hope for both the artist's sake, for NoonChorus' sake, for the venue's sake, that continues to exist. And I mean, I think our numbers in terms of ticket sales have proven that. I think people were like, "Is there going to be a live stream fatigue?" And it's definitely not the case. Like people are still tuning in, and those super consistent numbers, and that's encouraging.
Yeah, hardcore fans definitely wanna see whatever they can of the artist, and, it
I
opens up a
think,
lot of artistic opportunities for the artist as well.
yeah,
In addition to coming back into shows, I mean, ultimately, when this is all said and done and we're going back to, full capacity, hopefully, shows, or just, we're going back kinda like whatever pre-COVID was, post-vaccine, pre-COVID, uh, venues, artists will still, to have this direct to fan link is really an interesting opportunity for artists, and it opens up so many different artistic avenues for them. I mean, do you sort of see a place for Noon Chorus providing that for artists when
I
they
think
after
yeah,
touring comes back?
I think that's a really good point because like this is one of the things that At first, it was an education process, talking to managers and artist teams about like the benefits of ticketed live streaming. Now it's become more of the norm. But I think the big, not an argument, but like one point that our managers would make is like, for so long this type of content has been given away for free. Why are our fans going to want to pay for it? But I think we've proven that fans are willing to pay for it to support these artists. So to your point, I think that it doesn't just have to be these shows that are streamed from venues when they're on tour, but live streaming can be this perfect tool for an artist to like, in between tour cycles, we have some new material that we want to debut. Um, we're gonna do this ticketed live stream event, and we can do something incredibly creative. We can do something visually stunning from a unique location, and the ticketed portion can help cover that production. And now they own this beautiful piece of content that they can that the artist can use again and again and again. So I think that's really, you're making an excellent point here with the, it opens up so many more opportunities for us to see incredible sort of visual content online, by having the ticketed option.
Yeah, absolutely. And COVID was obviously pushed everyone in this direction, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is this is this something that ultimately adds value to the music industry?
I
Like, is
think so.
COVID kinda helping push the music industry in a more positive direction ultimately?
I I mean, I think there's a bunch of ways to answer that question. I hope like from the artistic standpoint, I think definitely that like this is a way for artists to fund more creative pieces of
Mhm.
content, right?
Yeah.
But I hope that this somehow highlights the inequity that exists in the music industry right now. The fact
What
that
it
artists have to rely on being on the road for that some artists have to rely on being on the road for 200 days a year seems insane, that they have to basically give away their recorded music for free. The dividends that are paying from that are just, you can't live off that, and that's being proven, right?
Right,
So
right.
where do we expect our most treasured art form to go if you can't make a living off of it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly provides a different avenue for artists to get to their fans and also to generate
Yeah.
revenue from their artistic efforts, and that's, clearly really advantageous for the artists. There's a whole sector of people in the live music environment that are kind of n not working and work primarily because artists are on the road. So,
Yeah.
look, streaming is phenomenal, and it's gonna change. How do you see it changing the face of
Okay.
how
Yeah.
do you say changing the music environment and ecosystem? Uh, Agents, roadies, tech people, um, I want them to keep working. I'm not saying that I don't think artists should not be streaming, but certainly, there's kind of a disruption that's potentially occurring in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we were with the contentment camping business, we were kind of part of that industry in a way, right? We were one of the many vendors that made up a music festival. A
Yeah,
music
right,
festival,
right, right.
they don't just like own everything and roll it out. It's made up of thousands of independent contractors that come together to put something incredible on for people, and
Yeah.
that's all on halt right now. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have the answer for that. I think it's I come from that, so I understand
Yeah.
that. And my colleagues and community, that's everyone I know. They're out of work.
Mhm.
They're live event
Yeah.
contractors, and they're all, it's terrible. But I don't know. I don't know how. I hope that somehow streaming and live shows can work together. Um, I want that to come back as quickly as the rest of us do, though. from a personal
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah. I guess it just made me think about that when you're like, artists don't need to tour 200 days out of the year. Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
I
If
don't
all
I don't know if
artists stop touring, then we're sort of like at the same place where we are now.
no, I don't think that's I think what I'm trying to say is like there's some imbalance in perhaps the recorded music and the touring music. Like I think um, there there's still going to be the desire and idea that artists want to be to schedule these types of tours, but when
Mhm.
they're not on tour and they're not earning money from other sources than touring, when it
Yeah.
does come to a halt,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
does underscore that there is a problem there. I think
Well, or
that's
there's
what I was
an
trying to say.
yeah, yeah. I mean, or there's an opportunity for them to continue to put their music out
Right,
to their fan base and have a way to do that. So,
right,
in essence, the entire thing is still trying to be. It's still shaking out. We're not really at the end of wherever we're going with this, but in the meantime, fans are getting to see artists. Artists are getting to perform, and you know, we're going to see where that goes. I think this is all kind of an evolving thing, and it's super interesting. And it's even more
yeah.
intriguing that the amazingly timely transition that you made in your own career to get out of glamping at festivals and move into this. So that's a little suspicious timing there, Andrew. But no, I'm
I
kidding.
know.
It was
Yeah,
fortunate and timely.
right. I know. I feel like the devil's sitting right on the other side of the table here. He's like holding up the contract in
You
front of me.
signed here, man. Well, listen, this has been really, really interesting. I wish you continued success with Noon Chorus. I know I'm watching a ton of the streams there, and I hope that that people continue to do that, man. I really, uh, I really wish you luck in that.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and yeah, it's been really nice to chat. This is
Yeah, yeah,
great.
I've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this a lot, man. And hopefully you'll come back on at some point in the future and update us and
I
let
would
us
love
know what's
to.
going on, man. And
We can get Alex on next time too.
that'd be
He's a
great. Yeah, to have both of you guys in there, and
yeah.
let's talk a little more about the tech. I'll try to just roll up my sleeves and pretend like I know all about that stuff, but I'm sure I'll learn a ton from him. Anyway,
Yeah.
man, thanks a lot for being on Roadcase. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, well, there you have it. Andrew Jensen of the streaming service NoonChorus on Roadcase. Really interesting to hear Andrew talk about how he's kind of providing his own words, a home for artists to perform for their fans under these really fucked up times during the show stoppage because of COVID. Not really sure if we're looking at the future of music or we're looking at different types of opportunities for the future. I know it's going to be something different. I don't know what shows are going to look like when they come back. I can kind of imagine that, as we talked about, they might be a reduced capacity kind of scenario, and there might be more people tuning into streams from home, and Noon Chorus streaming service will be right at the center of that for the artists that tend to gravitate towards that particular service. So it's definitely interesting for the future. I don't know what the future holds, but streaming very well could be a part of how we tend to experience shows going forward. In the meantime, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to Roadcase. I'd like to remind you to get involved with Roadcase. You can email me with your questions, comments, concerns at info@roadcasepod. Please follow us on our socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We're at RoadcasePod. If you can do so and are able to, support this podcast on Patreon. We have a Patreon site at patreon.com/RoadcasePod. Again, I'd like to thank Andrew Jensen for being on Roadcase. I'd like to thank Walter for this fantastic theme music that we have, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. So we've got a lot of great episodes coming up on Roadcase, and we'll see you on the road.